talk on evilmode. Who am I? My name is Ling. I work for a company called Lab49, financial services. You can find me on GitHub under the handle Ling, and my Twitter is LingCoder. Some things that I've done. So I'm the author of Vim Bufferline. It's a very simple plugin for Vim that just shows you all of the buffers that you have open on the command bar. And then shortly after I wrote that, I wrote Vim Airline, which is one of the most popular status tagging plugins available for Vim. And then of course, as with any person that uses Vim or Emacs, they have their own config. So I have mine. It's called name.vim, very original name. And then, of course, once I discovered and transitioned and switched over to Emacs, I started my own Emacs. And then I also wrote some Emacs packages. So Evil Visual Star, that is a motion that I wrote on top of Evil. And my most recent Emacs package is pt.el, which is Platinum Searcher. So it's kind of like, so there's app, there's ag, right? And then there's Platinum Searcher. So this was Run and Go, which is way better on Windows, because if any of you guys try to use Emacs on Windows, trying to get any of these Unixy tools to work on Windows is a huge pain in the ass. But this actually you just download the binary and it works. So I use that. It's pretty awesome. I highly recommend it if you're on Windows. So of course the thing I was thinking about, like, well, okay, Vim, yeah, it's all modal editing. And that's what everyone really thinks about when you talk about when they talk about Vim. But the irony here is Emacs is modal too. Surprise. When you're listening to packages, what does N and P do? Well, they don't insert N and P. They actually go up and down the line. You can I to install, D to delete, and X to execute your markings. Like, that's a different mode. It's completely different from when you're editing a buffer. Duret, everyone's favorite file manager, same thing. You got N and P to move around, you got J to jump to a buffer by completion, and then you got M to mark some files to do whatever you like. And of course, every major mode has some goodies that they tack on to Control-C. So if that's the case, why is modal editing important, or why is it worthwhile? So I probably picked the worst day to say this slide right here because we just did a live coding session. But as developers, most of the time we're actually not writing code. We're navigating around, we're jumping to definition, we're looking up documentation, we're manipulating text. We're not actually writing it, we're changing code, right? Which is why, like, it's called normal mode, and that's why it's the default. And for me, I think it's just a better ergonomic choice. There's no such thing as Vim Pinky, but there is Emacs Pinky. And I have my caps lock is my control. I tried to learn the Emacs thing, but the thumb curl kind of annoys me. I can do it, like I play piano, so it's not like I can't physically do it, but to me it's just annoying enough, like, oh, I have to do this all the time. So for me, like, having modal editing is actually just better for my fingers in general. And like, we're typing on our keyboards 8 hours a day, so it's something to consider. And yeah, so I hate where Alt is and all the cool stuff is with meta, so yeah. So back to basics. Let's start with some Emacs motion. So everyone knows, like, you move forward characters, go backwards for some words, paragraphs. And then of course you got some manipulation. You can kill some lines, kill words, kill sentences. But then it kind of gets more complicated when you want to do more than that. Like, you have to get involved with marking things and just exchanging the mark, jumping back and forth. Like, for me, it takes more cognitive load to actually figure out what I want to do when I'm in Emacs. So for example, if my cursor was right here, how would I delete everything inside these parentheses? Well, in Emacs, you probably just kill back an expression and then kill forward, right, as two separate operations. Because what I found was that, did I miss a slide? Oh yeah, so yeah. So Emacs users, I think they tend to think of their code as code, right? Because there's lists, like there's abstract syntax trees, like it's really what Emacs users are kind of used to. Whereas Vim's heritage, I feel it's more text-oriented. Like, it can work anywhere. It doesn't matter what the language is. It kind of searches things by what you see in the text. So in Emacs, I found that this simple operation where I just want to delete text inside parentheses, I found it's actually quite complicated. And the default key bindings for these is, I forget, but it's like, I don't know, does anyone know the default key bindings for killing back?
Okay.
For forward or back?
Well, to kill the next expression.
The next one.
Oh, then, yeah, the control alt back and forth, B and F, that moves you back and forth between the parentheses.
Right.
Okay, that kills it.
Yeah, okay. Then of course, with that, it's actually not uncommon for Emacs users to just write an elist function to just solve their problem, right? So, but what I find the issue with this is you end up writing a lot of custom functions and then you just bind them to another key binding. And then you have this huge list of key bindings that are specific to your configuration, which is fine, right? Because that's basically what Emacs is really great for, is just the customizability, right? But I find that because it's not as simple to do these common operations, that people tend to just solve it by just writing custom functions. So I don't know if you guys, but there was a blog post up on Hacker News recently, just about like Adam, the text editor, why I can never replace Vim or Emacs. And one of the things like Emacs was extensibility was like its thing, and Vim is composable, right? And then of course in the comments you can see Emacs people say, well actually Emacs is also composable. But the thing here is like Vim treats it as a first-class citizen. And what I mean by that is you have your operator, you add a motion, you add a text object, and it's awesome. So that's really all it is, and these are the actual keys that you'd be pressing with Vim. You have your operator, like I'm going to change something, I'm going to delete something, I'm going to yank something. It's same for anything you can possibly think of. You got your motion, whether it's inner for like inside of the quotes, or A for around, like including the quotes, for example, right? And you got your text object. It can be a word, a paragraph, a sentence, or a block. Now, where this gets really, really powerful is you can build on top of this, and it just reads like English. Like, I want to change the inner word, or I want to change around a paragraph, or I want to change a sentence, change a block, right? Or if you want to create a new text object, like with new plugins, packages, like a comment, like I want to comment this, I want to, the operator, sorry. So you can create a comment operator, so I can comment around this paragraph. Right? So basically, you guys all know how to use Vim already, because that's very memorable, right? You want to change a word, like it literally is CW. Like, I don't think anyone will forget that after I just told you that. And then from here, it's just all muscle memory. Unlike Emacs, where I know what this does because I had to look it up, but it's kind of hard to remember a lot of Emacs keybinds what it does. For those who don't know, this creates a new frame. Very useful. Actually, one of the main reasons why I switched over to Emacs because you can actually have multiple windows. It's kind of useful when you got multiple monitors. Control X50 will delete the frame for you. And of course, coding can be repetitive. So Vim has a very, very powerful operator called the dot operator. And what it does is just repeat whatever you did previously. Very, very, very useful. And I'll show some demos of this in a bit. So if I like Vim so much, why am I bothering to use Emacs? So for starters, this entire demo is actually an org mode file, and I just exported it with a package called reveal.js. So as you can see, it's kind of I'm already embracing this Emacs of like taking over every part of my life. So this is just org mode. So that's one part just really cool. Like we got the fancy JavaScript, HTML presentation thing, and of course it's just nice to be able to just play Tetris every once in a while. This is just there as well, of course. And actually, one of my personal favorites is Zone. Let's see if I can get something cool in here. Let's try another one. I don't know if you guys know about this this Easter egg, but I like the screensaver. Yeah, so I guess now I'll just show you some examples that I want to do. So for example, if I want to, oops. All right, there it is. So if I want to delete words, if I want to delete this word, I'm going to delete a word, D-A-W. That's all I had to do. If I was in Emacs mode, I would probably have to go jump back a word and, what was it, MD? There you go. For me, that was, I'm not very good at my Emacs bindings. So that was one example. It's just when you're inside of a word, I find it's just much easier to do it in Vim. For example, if I want to visually select everything in these arguments, I can just VI, so visually select the inner parentheses. So VI in parentheses, or VI. Sorry, you guys probably can't see that. Let me make it bigger. So I can go VI parens, right? And then I've selected all those things, right? Something like that I find is very difficult to do in Emacs. Typically what you do in Emacs is actually, rather than editing the text directly, again, you have something more powerful. Like for this, most Emacs users will probably use expand region, right? So you go control equals, and then you expand until you find everything where you come down, right? So like, again, like Emacs, you have a lot more powerful tools that kind of understand your code more. Vim, you have more like pinpoint editing exactly the text that you want to do. So let me go back to another example. So let's see. Changing inside of a block. So again, if I want to change this entire function, what do? I can visually select the inner block, everything selected, right? Or I can do it in one function where I can just say, I want to change in a block, puts me in insert mode, I can do whatever I want. It's very quick, very simple. Another interesting thing here is GN. So GN is a very, very powerful thing. It stands for go to the next. So for example, in Vim, if I want to say rename this variable, I can hit star, that matches everything, right? I jump back to the previous, I go CGN to something. And this is where the dot operator comes really, really handy. I just hit dot, it'll jump to the next one, change it, and that's how I rename the variable. And of course, you can undo and go back. And where this is really powerful is you can, dot to repeat, jump to the next, skip it, and then do it that way. Now, everything I'm showing you here can be done in just default VI. No, not VI, default Vim, right? And this is why a lot of people, like sysadmins and they can use Vim because it gives you so much power to just edit text in general. The language that you're working in doesn't really have much to hinder you from being able to do what you want to do.
So this is the Vim version of query replace.
Right. So query replace. What is it? There we go. So query replace, I can with result, saying yes, no, yes, yes, yes. Right. So to me, that took more key presses. For one, I had to meta shift 6, which is a lot more complicated than just star, which selects everything. So again, this goes back to like, yes, you can do all these things in Emacs, but I just find it just way faster to do it in Vim because it's the muscle memory, and I don't have to be involved. I don't have to get involved with hitting meta all the time.
But of course, should be mentioned, Emacs, you could always rebind it if you really wanted to use the Vim keys instead.
Correct, and this talks about evil mode, right? So all the stuff I'm doing now is in evil mode. But the key thing here, I think, the key takeaway is if you know Vim, you can go to any machine and you can be productive, where it's not necessarily the case if you're going to another Emacs, sure. Right? You go to another Emacs, it's a completely different thing. I think there was on Reddit, it's like using someone else's Emacs config is like wearing their underwear. It's like something you don't want.
They might have rebound that key to H or something.
Yeah, exactly. But in Vim, it's actually usually not best practice to change any default binding. Precisely because you want to be able to jump between machines and use Vim. And everything that's custom is usually after what they call a leader key. So the default is that is backslash, and the common rebinding of that is comma. But essentially, you put all your custom personal stuff with the comma prefix, and then anything that's custom for you, you can kind of just block that off in your mind if you're using another machine. So that was CN. And of course, there's also commenting. So for this, I can comment a paragraph, and just like that, it's commented. Or I can comment a block. I didn't get that right. Or I can just comment this out, and everything's fine. So again, I'm just building on top of operators, right? So that was the GC. I bound that to GC. It's similar to the default bind for commentary, a plugin written by Tim Pope, which is awesome. So essentially, again, I'm just building on top of the language of Vim, which is just, the operator is just GC for comment, and then just gonna select an inner block or parens or something. Another interesting thing is, another awesome plugin, one of my favorites, is Vim Surround, also written by Tim Pope. And it's just surround. So if I want to change these parens from parens to square brackets, I just CS for change surrounding. So CS, change surrounding, parens, so the actual key parens, and then square. So again, very easy to remember. It actually is keys and the thing that you're seeing that you're changing. So I find that like all these things, it's just very, very easy and very powerful to just directly edit the text that's right in front of you and then move on with your life. Now, of course, the question you're all thinking is like, okay, well, if I like Vim so much, why do you want to use Emacs? And one of the things is, well, sometimes I just want to have it know exactly what I want to do. That was not what I wanted to do.
Are you sure? Emacs knows best.
At least it's syntactically correct. But essentially, so that was multiple cursors not doing what I wanted to do. But let me try this again. Test. Ooh, that's cool. Okay, that was unexpected. Let me try it up here. Yeah, something's messed up with my config. I'm in a virtual machine, so I may have just got a latest version. But I guess what I really want to show here is, for example, if I have foo equals couple args, if I was to do like regular text editing, I would have to manually skip couple and args because it's in a string, right? If I do a search replace, you know, I can go couple something. Like, this picks up this variable or the string where I don't want it to. So there is an extra mental cognitive load to actually go in and ignore these things. But what I find, especially this is building on top of JS2 mode, is, well, if I want to rename this, and you can ignore the weird bug this here is, but if I want to rename a variable, it was smart enough to actually not even select that for me. And this is where I think it's really powerful. Especially with JS2 mode, because I do a lot of JavaScript these days. It's just like the tooling for understanding code is very useful to be able to just get my work done. And another interesting thing, so for example, in Angular, I don't know if anyone codes in Angular. So they have this thing where you have to use this weird syntax, because if you don't do that, you're going to get, you can't minify your code. So essentially what you do is you have an array, and then your last argument of the array is a function, which then has the same arguments that you want. So whenever you need to change this function, it's very tedious work to do this. So what I do is just, I have a binding, and I just use thing at point to figure out what this is, and then I just replay a macro and then put in that string. So yes, I could do this in Vim as well. I can read the text, parse it. But because I'm in Emacs, I have this thing called thing at point. And it tells me that this thing at point is an array. So I'm just going to grab the last thing of the array and then put the word in. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg, where having all this stuff available to me in Emacs is just, I think it just makes my life a lot better in some ways. And now I have the best of both worlds because I can have evil mode. So I got my muscle memory, got my Vim stuff, and then I get to enjoy all the things that Emacs has to offer. Anyway, so that's the talk. I'm open for questions if anyone has anything.
Very quick one. You were showing what it looked like Tim Pope's surround. Is that key bindings you added to evil mode, or does it come with evil mode?
That is a package called surround. Yeah. Yes.
Silly question, but is the org mode talk with Reveal.js up on your GitHub page?
It is not up on my GitHub page, but I could put that up maybe as a gist
Yeah.
for this. I guess you can maybe send out notes after the meetup.
Sure, I also link from the videos page. So, okay.
Yeah, no problem. I can put that up. Yes.
So is evil mode an all or nothing thing?
It's yes and no. So if you look at my config, I actually have a whole bunch of, probably can't see that. So I actually have a whole bunch of modes that I disable evil mode. So it is all or it sort of. So the problem with evil mode is there isn't, it's not a first-class citizen, right? Which is the problem, right? Because for example, I don't use evil mode key bindings when I'm in a shell. Right, I just use Emacs. I Control A, Control E. That's all I do in there. So that's what I use. Like the Project Explorer, I don't really need, even though by default they bind J and K to go up and down. When I'm in Magit, the status, I don't use Vim. Right, so I've already kind of trained myself to not use Vim everywhere because I understand that sometimes it's just easier to go with what everyone else is using. Because the moment you try to take these Vim bindings and kind of force them into these other packages where there isn't a lot of maintenance, then you kind of run into like weird behavior. So what I have here is, you'll notice that the status line changes red. So that's how I know that I'm in Emacs right now. So similarly here, if I go into Magit, it goes red here, so I know that I'm in Emacs. So that's kind of like a visual aid for myself to know that I have to hit N and P rather than J and K.
But when you're in a buffer in evil mode, is it standard VI behavior where
Yes.
you command a normal and insert mode?
When I'm editing text, no question, it's Vim. When I'm not editing text, and you'll notice all these things that I mentioned, I'm not editing text. Right? When I'm in Dured, I use Emacs bindings. When I'm in a shell, I use, well, I guess you're typing. But I'm not editing text, right? I'm not manipulating text. And for me, that's a distinction of when I use Vim bindings and when I use Emacs bindings.
Well, I guess the question was, when you're in one of these Vim modes, does it also give you the separation between inserting text mode and Vim command mode?
Oh, yes, definitely. And part of the reason why I'm able to use evil mode is because it implements so much of Vim, right? And I guess I can show you. For example, like little things like this. Why is it not working? Oh no, I'm live coding. I thought that worked. Sorry, I haven't used that in a while. What I was gonna do is, let me try this again. Oh, that's already sorted. All right, so right there, I just sorted some letters, some numbers. I'll go into more detail what I did here. So let me put this here. I'll make this big here, make this bigger. So I'm going to visually select this area. And something that Vim is very powerful at is, because it's just a text editor, it really makes a point to integrate with external tools, right? So right here, what I can do is bang, which means shell it to an external command, and sort is just the default Unix sort command. Sort it, and it put the 12 in front because it's
correct.
It is correct. It's doing that.
So it does have a sort. Could you type sort dash n?
All right. There we go. So of course you can do that in Emacs as well. I think it's
Sort lines.
sort. Yeah. Well,
Or
there's
sort lines numerically or something like that.
Yes, there is, and that's another interesting here. And it's kind of like when you're bridging two words. Like I can actually run sort lines here, which is the elist function, right? Or I do it this way. Make sure I'm doing it right. Yeah. So sort lines, the elist function is doing the same thing. So, but as you can tell there, like I actually just merged the two. Like I visually selected in Vim using Vim key bindings, but then I just went into MetaX and then did Emacs stuff. So it's like I can just pick and choose from both worlds what I want to be able to do. Yes.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. So that's just one example of basically that thing there was one of the things that every other editor has a lot of difficulty emulating. It's just like this shell integration with your external world. And another thing is just splits in general, right? If I want to create some splits and move, back, up, down, left, right, like this stuff is, like every other editor doesn't do splits like Emacs and Vim does. So for me to not have this workflow was like that's a game changer, right? Like I can't use an editor that won't let me do this, right? And just being able to manipulate all my splits very quickly and jump back and forth is very important for when I'm coding. So that was one other reason why I was able to switch over. What else? There's a lot of EX commands. There's a video I did where I kind of demoed evilmode. It might be easier just to play it, but I don't have internet connection. Let's see if I remember. I don't really use these things much, but actually, so one really interesting, I need to find a file, sorry, let me switch over. So for example, and this is very useful when you're manipulating log files. So let's say I'm going to use a G, which is the global command. I'm going to find everything that has set Q. I'm going to delete it. So right there, I just went through the entire thing, deleted everything. I think Emacs has something equivalent as well, which I think there's delete line, delete matching lines. So again, Emacs has this. But the difference here is I just have to type G and a search, and you'll notice that D was what I finally used there, and that is actually an operator. So again, it goes way back to what I said earlier, like everything kind of ties together, like D is the actual operator, and just happened to be feeding it a search for what to do with the operation. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, just how much work is it to set up evil mode, and how can you set in an evil file?
Are you a Vim user or not? Actually, if you're curious of doing this, I would actually recommend learning Vim, right? Because you're not going to appreciate what Vim can do unless you're actually using Vim, and more so, you're not going to appreciate how powerful Vim is unless you learn most of it without using a single plugin. And that is a key distinction between Vim and Emacs. Vim, you can be extremely productive with 0 plugins whatsoever. And Emacs you can as well, but nobody really goes in the Emacs world like, hey, yeah, you shouldn't install a package. You just use standard Emacs. Like no one really does that. Like you're expected to customize your environment. You're expected to install a ton of packages. I think I got like 60 or 70 installed on mine. And you just expect to grow your editor into the exact tool you want it to be. Whereas in Vim, it's a very segregated community. You've got the people that are like, stock Vim, I'm not going to change anything about it. And then you've got the other people, kind of like me, that's like, let's install like 80 plugins and make it become an IDE. Which naturally for me is why Emacs is a better fit for my personality. But yes, to answer your question, learn Vim first, and then when you use it in this, you will appreciate why this is just better than like Sublime's emulation or Atom's emulation or all these other ones. You just really appreciate why evilmode is just that good. Yes?
So I've tried Vim emulation in a lot of other text editors, and there's always something that sucks about it that I can't do that I would expect to do in Vim. Have you run into anything in evilmode like that?
The one and only thing that annoys me is it doesn't implement the jump list that Vim does. So the jump list is, basically when you're in Vim, the jump list is like a stack of where you are, right? So if you're jumping to file, jumping to definitions, you can control O to jump back to where you were, no matter where the file was. So in evilmode, if I go to I can go to here, jump back. You'll notice that I can use these bindings, Control O to go back and Control I to go forward. I can go back and forward, but only in the same buffer, right? Because it just uses the mark ring internally, right? And the mark ring is local to the buffer, and then there's the global mark ring, right? But the problem with the Emacs implementation is the mark ring disappears if your buffer is dead, right? Whereas the jump list in Vim is persistent. So if I go in Vim, I jump around, jump between different files, I kill Vim, I go back in, I go Control O, it'll jump back to exactly where I was, and it'll remember the entire history of where I was. And that, to me, is like very, very, very helpful. And so for me, that's one thing I miss. And the times when I need to do that, I just go Control X space, and then I jump back with the global mark rank. So yeah, basically I use the Emacs functionality to kind of mimic what I did, but that's the biggest thing that I miss in Vim when I'm in evil mode. But everything else is pretty much covers it. Yes.
How much does Evo simulate Vim?
As I said, the jump list is like on top of the list, what it doesn't do. The GN motion wasn't in Evo for a bit, but I just wrote my own elist function to mimic the motion like half a year ago, and then finally they implemented a better version upstream and then put it in, which I guess is kind of interesting. If I can, maybe if I can pull up an older version of this. I want to check out. Yes. That didn't work. Sorry. Try this again. And it's still too new. But essentially, I defined it in here. I'll have to go back even further to show that. But basically what I want to say is like, because it's all written in Emacs, you just go change it. If you want to change something in Vim, you go read some C code and try to change it there, which is why NeoVim is such a big thing right now. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but NeoVim is like this new thing where they're going and basically refactoring everything and writing it to make it better moving forward with more, first class support for plugins and stuff like that. Yes. Any more questions? Okay, well, in that case, thanks for having me here.